I'm Mike Baldock and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. The meeting will be recorded and proceedings will be conducted in accordance with the Council's constitution, including procedural rules which are available on the Council's website. For anybody not certain, that means you go through the chair. There are no conversations between councillors and officers. Please go through the chair. There is no plan, item 1. There is no planned evacuation drill this evening, and accordingly, if the alarm sounds, it is to be treated as a genuine need to evacuate. There are emergency exits. I love the way this is dots. Right, there's one over there, and there are emergency exits by the lifts. Please do not use the lifts. Probably best to use that one. On exiting, you will be directed to the assembly point, and it is important that you remain there and do not return to the building until I have announced that it is safe to do so. If anyone present will need assistance in evacuating, could you please inform me now so that we can make necessary arrangements to assist you? Somebody got a hand up over there. Just adjusting their sunglasses. Right, the meeting has a quasi-duty. No, it doesn't. Members must consider each application and everything that is said in the meeting concerning the application and make their decision based solely on their planning judgment of the information available to them. Following a decision by members, delegated authority is given to the planning officer to issue the decision notice. Planning permission is not granted or refused until the issue of that decision notice. Any member of the council who is not a member of the planning committee may attend as a visiting member and may speak, having given prior notification. Such visiting members may, of course, include ward members, and whilst visiting members can speak on an application, they are not permitted to vote. Any member acting as a substitute on the planning committee must have undertaken appropriate training before doing so. Members must remain in the meeting for the whole time that each item is being debated and should not vote on the item unless they have done so. I should now like to welcome our public speakers and remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak, and an audible warning of time will be given when there are 30 seconds remaining. If the meeting is deferred to conduct a site meeting, I really hope it isn't, you may speak both at this meeting and at the site meeting, but there will be no further opportunity to speak on the matter when it comes back to the planning committee. The meeting will follow the order set out in the agenda. Item 2, apologies for absence and substitutes.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Elliot Jays and his substitute is Councillor Chris Palmer, Councillor James Hunt and his substitute is Councillor Lloyd Bowen, Councillor Mike Henderson and his substitute is Councillor Hannah Perkin, Councillor James Hall, whose substitute is Councillor Richard Palmer. Thank you.
Okay, item 3.
Chairman.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. I can't remember. It's been a while since. Did we set? We don't stand it.
No.
Thank you. Also, apologies from Councillor Martington. Thank you.
Item 3, minutes. To approve the minutes of a meeting held on the 20th of July, minutes 207 to 210. Agreed. Thank you. You did a formal vote on that, Kelly? Okay, lovely. Okay, item 4, to invite members' declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests under the Localism Act. No. Any disclosable non-pecuniary interests under the Conduct of Code adopted by the Council. I'd like to remind the meeting that where it is possible, the fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude that there was a real possibility that a member might be predetermined or biased on any agenda item. The member should declare this possibility and then leave the room whilst that item is considered. The point of clarity and transparency, I note that Borden Parish Council have submitted, I think it's an objection to 2.2. I'm a member of Borden Parish Council, but did not sit in on that item or play any part in the discussion of that item. Item number 5. I can hear something. Is something? Oh, is that what it is? Can you please turn your mobile phones off? Item 5, to consider the attached header planning reports, parts 2 and 5. Item 2.1 is reference number 23/500-942/full in Woodseaves, Staple Street Road, Dunkirk. Do we have any updates from the officers?
Thank you, Chairman. No update on the application or the report.
Right. Can I ask Suzanne Glazer-Creed if she's here to speak? But we will have a presentation first.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application to raise the roof height of a dwelling and convert the resultant loft space with dormer windows and roof lights to habitable accommodation. This is the application site. The site is within the built confines of Bourton-under-Blean in a residential environment. There's a bungalow immediately to the north, a two-storey dwelling to the south, two-storey dwellings to the rear of the site, and the area is generally characterised by two-storey and single-storey dwellings of mixed architectural form and character. This is the bungalow at the moment. It's roughly an L-shaped bungalow with a flat roof rear extension. And this is the proposal. So members will see that the roof height is being raised and the eaves height at the front of the building is slightly raised as well. A dormer window is proposed in the front elevation, which is the top left elevation that you can see on the plan. And the rear, which is the elevation just below that, contains 3 dormer windows. Given the scale and character of buildings and dwellings in the surrounding area, the officer's view is that the extension is well designed and not out of scale or character with the area. And although we have received objections from residents and the parish council relating to, from residents anyway, in relation to impacts on privacy, the dormer windows in the newly created first floor would still maintain a distance of 26 metres to the residential properties to the rear, which is in excess of the usual standards that the council would use of 21 metres and is considered acceptable. Here are some pictures of the property. So the top right picture is the front elevation, and the bottom middle picture is the rear elevation of the property with the current flat roof extension. That's the property from the road, which is partially hidden behind a hedge. You can see there you've got a neighbouring bungalow to the left-hand side and the two-storey property to the right-hand side. Again, you can see the bungalow through the hedge there in part, with the neighbouring two-storey dwelling, which is the White House, immediately next to it. And you can also see the street scene on Staple Street Road there, where you have a number of two-storey dwellings. That's looking in the other direction, where essentially the two-storey dwelling almost totally obscures it does totally obscure the bungalow from the street scene. Oh, wrong way. And then this is looking past that house, so the application site is immediately on the right-hand side, which you can't see. And then the neighbouring bungalow is the building in white, and you can see then further two-storey dwellings further in the distance. So the officer's view is that the application is acceptable in terms of its impact on the character and appearance of the area and in terms of relationship with neighbouring properties, and the recommendation is that planning permission should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Suzanne Glazier Creed here? Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Okay, so you don't wish to speak. Okay. I'll move the officer's recommendation. Can Councillor Andy Booth seconding? Anyone wish to speak? Councillor Winklis.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the photographs that we've been shown, I cannot really see we have any grounds to refuse this myself. I know there have been some concerns about neighbouring properties being obscured possibly by sunlight, but sunlight, as I understand, is not really a right, unfortunately. So I personally can't see a reason to turn this one down myself, unless anybody else in the debate changes my mind. Thank you.
Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank the officer for the presentation. Can we see the photograph of the front of the property, please? Okay. Like many people here, I've lived in Swale for quite a considerable time. And one thing I know for sure is there is a lack of bungalows. We have an ageing population, and we have a lot of people that choose to move to Swale in their latter years. The issue I have is, and I can hear the commentary, and I'm sure you can, Chairman, from a number of years ago, where the comment would have been made, we'll move to a bigger house. It is unfortunate that bungalows by design and by nature are generally single story and do not have dormer windows and basically a 2-story building. I'm not into calling it 1.5 stories. It's 2 stories. It's got 2 floors, a ground floor and a first floor. I'll let them go. Hopefully that's not a bungalow fire. So yeah, my point being, Mr. Chairman, that we are short of bungalows. The developments that this committee has seen and will be seeing in the future, I'm sure, will not have that many bungalows to replace or add to this current bungalow. Excuse me. As far as scale and bulk is concerned, then I have to disagree with the officer's commentary. A bungalow by design, its scale and proportions are as we see there. To add a further considerable height to this 1-story building, I would suggest is out of scale and would certainly compromise as far as bulk is concerned. Furthermore, again, history dictates through this committee that where we've seen applications for a bungalow, it has been made very clear through condition that the height, the ridge height of the building has been of such a degree that it actually prohibits dormer invasion. So again, contrary to what Mr. Winklis says, Councillor Winklis, I will not be voting in favour of this, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. I have some sympathy with that. I have long said that we have a shortage of bungalows. We are constantly allowing the existing stock to be turned into 2-story. And if you have to go upstairs, it ceases to be a single story. Is there any planning law that allows us to protect bungalows?
No, we have no policy position that specifically says bungalows can't be extended and, you know, have additional floors added to them. It's a question of whether or not the extension is acceptable in terms of its impact on the local environment. And in this instance, the increase in height, as members will note from the report, is 1.4 metres, but I think probably dwellings and the extended bungalow as proposed would still be smaller in height and scale than a number of those two-storey properties. So our view is that the extension is acceptable in terms of that context. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer, Richard Palmer.
I hear what Councillor Booth says, and I think he's put it quite well. However, I don't think we've got really much grounds to refuse this, and I do agree with the officer, and I probably will be voting in favour of this application. Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chairman. Starting to have a look at this. My original thought was the actual increase in the height. Just looking at those pictures, I wonder almost the equivalent percentage of the increase would have been, because it does look rather a lot in comparison to what is already there. And that was one of the things which I was concerned about. But as the officer has said, there are other buildings in the same area, and particularly by the sound of it, there's a house which is already 2 stories. So it's not going to be necessarily out of keeping in that local area. I do still have concerns, I think, in terms of the elevation and the height of it, but it's not, as I say. And I do agree with Councillor Boo that that we do not have enough bungalows in the area. However, if we've not already started, if we've permitted other things in the past, how can you really defend them from a certain point going forward as a policy change? Or where you allowed that conversion, but you're not going to allow this one. So I have every sympathy, and I think where we should be preserving bungalows for all the right reasons. But sadly, I think history on this one is going to be difficult to not agree this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Can we see the photo of the existing bungalow from the road again?
It's partially obscured, but it's the brick building to the right-hand side, not the white bungalow that you can see.
So there's currently 2 bungalows side by side.
Correct.
And have we considered the impact on the white bungalow of the height increase?
Yes, we have, and deemed that to be acceptable, yes.
And are they one of the people who've objected?
They're not. I understand all the objections have come from properties at Berkeley Close, which is the road to the rear of the site.
Okay, Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. On this question of alleged shortage of bungalows in the borough, would it be possible through you, Mr. Chairman, to ask the officer if he knows what percentage of the housing stock in Swale are bungalows and whether that's above or below the national average?
Putting you on the spot, and if
I'm afraid I don't know that. I'm afraid.
Councillor Palmer Chris.
Perhaps we shouldn't be debating what bungalows we have had or what we have got, but perhaps for the future we can involve ourselves more with developers and put in strategies that they build more bungalows when they build housing developments. Thank you.
Yeah, we tried that with Manor Farm and the outline plan, and then they came back with reserve matters, and the bungalows are gone. Okay, if there's nobody else wishing to speak. Oh, sorry, son, I can't see you behind our new exciting screen.
Thank you, Chairman. Most of what I was going to say has already been said, so I won't prolong the debate any longer.
Okay, then. All those in favour, please indicate. 1, 2. This is where Cheryl normally takes over for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Those against? 1. Abstentions? 2. That is passed. Thank you. Item 2.2, what's the number? 17/505/711/hybrid. This is, it says Land Wises Lane, but this is for the Rugby Community Hub. Can we have an officer presentation?
Thank you, Chairman. It's Simon Dunlewin, the case officer speaking. Apologies, I'm not attending the committee in person. Good evening, everyone. I'm trying to share the actual presentation slides, which should be on the screen any moment.
We have them.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the approval of reserved matters at land at Wises Lane, Borden. The application seeks full approval of the layout, landscaping, scale and appearance of the proposed development, which is a rugby club, car park area and 2 full-size rugby pitches. So this is the site, which is just by Cryles Lane and to the rear of a small business centre and a couple of cottages on Wises Lane itself. This is the existing aerial view of the site from the west. So this is the business centre here. Wises Oast, I believe, is the name of the centre, and the cottages over here, which I mentioned earlier. The Borden Nature Reserve, which you may have picked up from the report, there's been quite a lot of concern about the impact of the proposal on the Borden Nature Reserve, which I abbreviate to the BNR. It's an agricultural field, as you can see. And this is an approximate site boundary of the extent of the proposal. The details of the frontages and dimensions are set out within the report itself. It's 3.76 hectares in site area in total. This is the view. The plane slightly tilted, but you can see from the east and further beyond where the current developments are occurring or construction is taking place on phase 1A, which is over here, just at the top end of Wises Lane. So that's the existing site. This is the overall site context from the approved illustrative master plan, and this is phase 2E. Phase 1A, which I just pointed to, is under construction, and that was part of the full permission within the hybrid appeal decision that approved the master plan for the whole of the area. The Western Link Road has been approved. There's still an application for phases 2A and 2B, which is pending a determination. So in terms of the layout, what you have is an entrance on Cryles Lane itself. These are the 2 rugby pitches with quite dense and extensive landscaping around the edges, covered within the report and reviewed by our tree officer. And I've touched upon some of the dimensions between the goalposts to the edge of the BNR, where there's been concern about displace rugby balls into this area. But this is essentially the layout with 65 car parking spaces, 4 disabled spaces along here. There's a cycle shed included. We have got details of that as well. But the main clubhouse building is located here. The hybrid required provision for the clubhouse for community use. So the first floor is a dedicated community facility. The ground floor is essentially changing rooms and toilets and ancillary facilities. So this is the main elevation to the front, which has been amended since the original submission based on comments from our conservation and design manager. So they basically pitched the roof. The overall floor space is 370 square meters, but the community facility will have over 100 square meters, and the full breakdown is provided under paragraph 3.2 of the report. And this is a CGI just to convey an impression of the facility. This is not the actual design of the building, as you can see, but this CGI was taken some time ago. But it's similar to the one that's before you on the screen. The main issues have all been considered. As you can appreciate, the hybrid had 74 conditions, and there's been quite a number of conditions which have been discharged site-wide. There's been concerns about the impact on ecology, and I have put a tabled update which summarizes the late representation from 2 objectors, which I provided comments on, but happy to take any questions. There's been one further representation received this morning, but that's from the same objector who has already made representation, and comments have already been included as part of the 17 objectors under paragraph 4.2 of the report. So there is no new material evidence objection to consider. It is really a suggestion by the lady who sent in the further representation that there is a rumour. I will say this, Chairman, it's not a valid planning ground for a further objection, but it's just a comment that if the rugby facility doesn't go ahead, the potential for housing development is real, and could the site benefit from the extension of the Borden Nature Reserve into that area? Of course, the hybrid permission already establishes from the context plan I've already shown you that the principle of the rugby club, the rugby pitches, 2 of them here, the third one being in this area, which is the open space. And there are further details to be submitted in regard to phase 2F, which is this part here. This is the primary school that's included as part of the development. So all in all, that essentially is the proposal, which has been considered by all technical experts as summarized in the report. There are no objections on technical grounds. And the Reserve Matters proposal is acceptable and policy compliant in the opinion of officers. So it is a recommendation for approval, subject to the conditions listed, of which there are 8 in the report. At the end of the report, I beg your pardon, there are 9. But you will see in the table paper that the applicant, following this publication of the report, asks whether there could be some minor changes to the wording, and we do consider it from our perspective as minor changes, to change the whole development to just the rugby pitches, because those are Sport England's recommended conditions and they do only relate to the rugby pitches themselves. And you can see from the layout that the majority of the site is basically natural grass laid out as rugby pitches. I think I will conclude by just reiterating the officer's recommendation for approval, subject to those conditions and the minor changes to conditions 7 and 8 as stated. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I ask Gaynor Aspin, first public speaker? There's a copy of Ms. Aspin's speech that has been handed out. You will have 3 minutes and you get a 30-second reminder. Perfectly happy to. We do need you to speak into the microphone, otherwise people at home can't hear. You can stand and just put it on and it will pick you up. The red button. Okay.
Probably need to sit at it, otherwise you won't be able to get the projection. Okay. Thanks. Good evening. I represent a community of more than 1,000 people who are affected by this application. The Environmental Health Officer has quite rightly described this application a major development. The success of any major project depends on the detailed planning. Reserved matters require such detail. However, this application raises more questions than answers. We believe that too much detailed information is missing for elected members to be able to make an informed decision today. Therefore, we respectfully and strongly urge council members to vote to defer approval, again, not delegated, but by full council, until all the required detail, assessment and documentation on all the key issues have been provided. The case officer has highlighted 43 points of concern raised during consultation, too many to cover in 3 minutes. There also appears to be a lack of reality check on the part of the applicant. Sittingbourne Rugby Club has ambitions for, I quote, a bigger, more successful and competitive operation. If this is the case, it is unrealistic to expect that there will not be a requirement for floodlighting for training and match purposes. The Mid-Kent Environmental Health Officer states in his correspondence, and I quote, given the nature of the grounds, I was under the impression floodlighting would be used. There's no provision either for external lighting. Yet again, this is unrealistic given the rugby club will also be used as a community hub, which therefore will be used by families. For safety reasons alone, external lighting must be a requirement. The Environmental Health Officer could not comment on the impact of lighting on the Borden Nature Reserve as this was outside his remit. So a lighting assessment of the impact on the Nature Reserve has also not been done. Given the sensitivity of the location of the rugby club right next to the Nature Reserve, this is a crucial requirement and a serious omission from this application. Borden Nature Reserve is the last bastion of local access to nature for residents and wildlife alike. It must be protected, and there's no provision for this in this Reserved Matters application. A major concern is the lack of a management plan and community uses agreement, which should form part of this application. Today, we do not know what the community hub will be used for. This detailed documentation should form part of Reserved Matters because key issues such as traffic, road layout, hours of operation, car parking, toilet facilities, and more, cannot be dealt with out of context. If the community hub is to be used as a functions venue, then there will be a greater demand for parking and toilets. It's unrealistic to suggest 65 car parking slots are enough, especially if the rugby club wishes to grow as per its stated ambition. Similarly, it's unrealistic to suggest people will be walking to the rugby club, the vast majority of whose members are not local. The local community and 5 neighbouring parishes were against this development. The planning committee has a responsibility to do everything possible to make this work for everyone's benefit, not just the rugby club, so that the decision to give approval is not regretted in years to come. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And can I ask Philip Wymark, a supporter, to come down and speak? Yeah, you just press the red button, and once you start, you'll get 3 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. This application would deliver a new purpose-built home for Sittingbourne Rugby Club and valuable community facilities, including a flexible community space, which will benefit a large number of local residents. After many unsuccessful attempts over the years, it is an opportunity for the club to establish a new home and to anchor facilities which will have a significant benefit on people's physical and mental well-being. The club has grown too large to be accommodated fully at Gore Court, and the facilities are already not able to accommodate the size of our junior section. We also lack security of tenure at Gore Court, which inhibits our growth. These new facilities would help us meet current needs and invest in future growth by securing funding from the RFU and Sport England, amongst others, which is currently out of reach for the club. One of our greatest concerns is that of access for all. Gore Court has no facilities to access to or for use by physically disadvantaged people, meaning that a number of our members and their families are unable to join in either rugby or social activities. The new facility would deliver the balance of sports and community usage envisaged in the Section 106 legal agreement for the Wises Lane site, with wheelchair access to the car park, clubhouse and pitches, ensuring that the facility is accessible to all, providing a real asset to the whole community. The proposal is landscape-led with buffers to the edges of the site, and the application is supported by a landscape management plan and specification for the landscape and horticultural works to ensure that the vision is delivered early and maintained in the long term. The principle of development has already been established. As set out in the officer's report, the design, landscape and access and layout proposed would all be in line with the outline permission for the land, which was granted in April 2021, as well as meeting all of Sport England and the Rugby Football Union's standards. The facility will have a community uses agreement to ensure that it delivers for all, with a management committee including a borough council councillor, officer and Borden Parish councillor established to oversee the facility. I welcome the recommendation from your planning department to approve this application, and with your support tonight, I look forward to the delivery of an exciting sporting and community facility of the highest standards and quality for our club, its members and the local community. Thank you all.
Thank you. And can I ask Councillor George Cole of Borden Parish Council to speak? I think you know the routine, but it's the red button and you get 3 minutes from when you start speaking.
Good evening, Chair. The Director of Planning's report addresses many of Borden Parish Council's comments. There are still areas that are a main cause for concern. The appearance of the clubhouse. The Wises Lane development is inevitably suburban, but the clubhouse sits on the edge of Borden village. We feel strongly that the clubhouse should tone in with the rural nature of the village and that it is not appropriate for it to be of, I quote, a contemporary character as a new landmark statement. The materials must blend in with local architecture and surroundings. Gas leakage from the nature reserve. Paragraph 712.1 says the EHO, however, considers a contamination watching brief condition is necessary. We can find no mention of such a condition in the list of conditions. Archaeology. The archaeology report is incomplete. Although KCC Archaeology signed off, they stated that further work is needed. We ask that this should happen. Coach manoeuvrability. The space for coaches to manoeuvre safely is inadequate. The swept path plan assumes that all cars will be parked in the marked bays. We consider this unlikely and that coaches will end up being parked on adjoining roads. Vehicular site access. The site plan shows what looks like an alternative entrance from Wises Lane. We believe that access should only be from Cryles Lane. Speed limit. KCC has agreed a reduction from 60 mph to 30 mph along Cryles Lane, but we would still like to see this reduced to a 20 mph zone. This would be consistent with the planned speed limit on the rest of the estate and safer for pedestrians and cyclists joining from the part of Cryles Lane that will be closed to vehicles. Car parking allocation. This is based on there being 2 pitches. However, there will be a 3rd pitch on adjacent community land. This pitch will attract cars not accounted for in the application. It is also assumed that many players will travel by coach. Many of the club's opponents are local, so there will be many more cars than predicted. Our concern is that these overall overspill vehicles will blight the locality environmentally and aesthetically. Public toilets. There are only 3 public toilets, including one disabled, in the plan. This is insufficient for the volume of spectators and visitors expected, especially considering that government policy states that all new public buildings should have separate male and female toilets.
Thank you. Perfectly timed. Okay, open for debate. I'll move the officer's recommendation, seconded by Councillor Booth. Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. I like the word consistency, and I shall be consistent. Chairman, I refer to pages Big 16 and Big 17, the planning history. I would suggest the significant planning history that goes in from the original hybrid scheme, 1757-11, and the subsequent submissions of details, etc. But to be fair, are approved. Until we get to page 18, where we have 2 related applications still pending consideration. Mr. Chairman, I put it to you that in my experience, there is not enough information contained in this document for me to make a value decision either in favour or against the application. I think there are some substantial items raised not only by the speakers, which I concur with, but I also amplify the concerns raised in the documentation, particularly that of Borden Parish Council. And in my opinion, those have still not been answered. I would push, Mr. Chairman, for a deferral of this application until the full evidence and full detail is available to this committee to make a proper decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. I won't take a proposal for deferral just yet, as I would like to have people have the opportunity to speak a little further. Also, there are a couple of questions I think that have been raised that if the committee is minded to defer, we really need to get aired so that they can event of a deferral. I've got Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm torn on this one. I'm not necessarily buying into the concerns of the rugby balls flying over into the off the actual area. I think there are lots of ways you can prevent that. So on that, I think it's okay. We are desperately short, I think, in my opinion, of facilities such as this across the borough, and things that promote health and well-being and sporting activities, regardless of age, should be applauded. But a couple of points I'm not clear on when the officer said in terms of, I don't know whether it's my lack of knowledge on this, whether it's rugby union, rugby league, I don't know, but 65 parking spaces. Now, irrespective of which one it is, if you have a full match day on 2 pitches, and if those 2 pitches are being used potentially for games at the same time, 65 car parking spaces is not going to be anywhere near enough for the people to be able to attend those matches, unless we are assuming that people will, and should we assume this, travel together. Now, as I've always been suggested, is never assume, because it makes an ass of you and me. So I'm not sure whether that actually is enough. Regardless of whether also they come on coaches, again, not going to assume that. So I have concerns in terms of the volume of parking. I also share the concerns that Councillor Booth and the speaker said in terms of the lights. And I think I agree there are gaps in the information, the knowledge that will actually enable for me to make that informed decision tonight. It's nearly there, and I do welcome the application. I'm not sure I can support it at this particular time, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Winklis.
Thank you, Chair. In principle, I'm in favour of having a sports facility, but there are things that are concerning me, which has already been touched on. First of all, can we have a view or a picture of the road or the Crowles Lane where the access route or to the car park is proposed? First of all,
do we have a photograph of the entrance? Or Andy, are you going to Google Earth this? Carry on whilst we Google Earth.
Right. Following on from that, as Councillor Bowen said, I'm very concerned about only 65 parking spaces being supplied. My experience of rugby matches, you get quite a few spectators come, and I would imagine they will come from various parts of Kent. They won't only be in this area, so that concerns me. Lack of the parking spaces, 65, I think is totally inadequate. And also, in the dark winter months of December and November, and even January to a point, it gets quite dark in this country at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By 4 o'clock, it's pitch black. And I will also be concerned about floodlight pollution. So they are my concerns. But I would also like to add that after this debate, I would think a deferral on these issues would be a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Winklis. We didn't get anywhere with Google Earth. Okay, whilst we're waiting, it is rugby union, by the way, Councillor Bowen. We shall move on to Councillor Palmer. Richard?
Yep, I think Councillor Booth made a very good point about the deferment, and if he was to propose it, I would second it. I do have concerns about the highways issue there. I think it's fantastic that Sittingbourne Rugby Club will have its own pitch, but I do have serious concerns. I can't work out from the report when it says the road is going to be widened to 5.5 metres. Is that the whole road, or just a section of the road by where they need a turning circle to get in, or whatever? It wasn't too clear. And I think that highlights that some things in the report are not that clear and needs further investigation. The extra pitch, does it have its own parking or does it not have its own parking? The lighting, I know it says in the report, and there is a condition that says no lighting can be put in, but I can't see rugby being played or the club not needing lighting at some stage. I actually wrote down here, I've got a concern about the design of it. I don't think it fits in with the area and that might need a bit more work. But my main concern is the information isn't fully there and the highways issues, I don't think have been fully covered, even by KCC Highways. Thank you.
Okay, are we Google Earthed up yet? Okay, over to Google Earth. Getting into this tech stuff. End of that lane.
So yeah, that's kind of the best I can do there. This is where the road dog legs around, and you've got the Wises Host building just out of picture around that dog leg. So the access by my
Can you not go a bit further forward?
I can come forward to a little bit more. Yeah. The access by my calculations is probably in this area here.
And can you just show us the corner? That's the industrial yard at the corner.
Yeah, that's Cryles Lane there.
That's Cryles Lane. Okay, thank you. I did want to, as Councillor Palmer has brought this up, I did want to get some clarity on this. 7.9.5, it says KCC Highways confirm that Cryles Lane will become a residential road with a 30 mile per hour speed limit. The road will also be widened to 5.5 metres. Now, bearing in mind this is one of our rural roads, and this road will be cut off. It'll be a road to nowhere once the link road to Borden Lane goes in. I would like some clarity as to whether or not it is the whole road that's going to be widened to 5.5 metres, what the purpose of that is, because at the moment it's a quiet rural lane. When it's cut off at the end, the only traffic movements will be to the nature reserve. It seems a hell of a lot of money, a hell of a lot of disruption whilst they widen the road for something that is going to be out of date in about 2 years. So can we have that clarified? I don't know. I did ask Mr. Dunlewin if he could clarify that. I don't know if he's been able to.
Yes, Chairman, I have made inquiries and rechecked the plans, and it looks like from what the applicant has told me early this evening is that the idea is just to have the access widen up to the entrance to the proposed club. But looking at the master plan, it does suggest that because once the Eastern Link Road goes in, there will be connections to Cryles Lane. So we do need further clarity whether or not the whole stretch, including the frontage onto BNR, will be expanded. But for the time being, as far as this reserve matters application is concerned, the applicant has confirmed that the widening will take place up to the entrance to Wises Lane. I mean, these are later phases which will be coming in for reserve matters approval. So therefore, it's not subject to the current proposal. I hope that's clear, sir. Chairman. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. But it's not really up to the applicant; it's up to KCC. So we need confirmation from KCC as to what they're expecting, because what we had been told previously was that there were no connecting roads onto that road. So if that's what you're now, and I think those other phases are only illustrative. and haven't actually been submitted yet. So we do need, I think we do need some clarity on that. The next speaker I've got is Councillor Perkin.
Thanks, Chair. So I have a few questions really. In terms of the floodlighting, presumably if the applicant was to have floodlighting that was permanent, that would have to be a part of the planning application at this stage. Is that correct?
If I can just come in here. So there is a condition on the outline planning permission that states that no floodlighting can be installed. Essentially, what the situation would be that you're looking at a reserve matters application, but that piggybacks onto the outline planning permission, which is the key planning permission for the site as a whole. So under the terms of this application, the development coming forwards won't include floodlighting. If in the future the rugby club decide that they want to make an app or have floodlighting, they would need to make a separate planning application to the council, and we would then obviously determine whether or not that was acceptable and look at any pros and cons and so forth and make a decision on that basis. But as things stand, under the outline permission, the scheme is bound, essentially not to have any floodlighting.
Thank you. That's really helpful. One of my main concerns really was, I think the member of the public brought up the impact of floodlighting because the pitch that I play for with floodlighting, you can see about 4 miles away. But I'm glad to hear that would have to be under a different application. Secondly, I suppose we don't have enough access to sport and wellbeing activities in Swale. I have to travel to Maidstone to do the sport that I play, which is not good for the environment, but it's also not a great indictment of how easy it is to access a sporting opportunity in the borough. So I think overall there's consensus that we all would like to see some more sporting opportunities within the borough. What do we know if this particular site has been considered under the Borough Council's pitch strategy at all? Is it part of that?
I think that's addressed at Andy. It is addressed in here, and it also points out the pitch strategy wasn't adopted, I think. Yeah, it's at 7.15.4 and 5.
Thank you. And then I guess my last point is that 3 toilets does seem like quite a small amount of toilets for the amount of people that are going to be there. And I'm not against deferring, but I think overall it would be good to have some more opportunity to sport and wellbeing activities in the borough. So I think anything that we can do to make that happen within remits where people are comfortable, then great.
Thank you. A lot of mention has been made of the original hybrid decision, and in that the Secretary of State regretted the lack of community involvement in putting the original proposals together. We heard from the Parish Council speaker earlier. They are not happy with the design. I think the comment that's used in the report that he quoted was that it was something about an urban state. Oh yeah, contemporary character as a new landmark statement. I think it's regrettable that we haven't, and the developers haven't sought to engage the Parish Council and community early on. That is something that was supposed to underpin development in this borough. We, as a council, we talk the talk. We talk about community engagement. I'm a little disappointed that it doesn't seem that there's been any engagement with the Parish Council to see if we could come up with a design that satisfied them. There is a almost monthly meeting about this development site where there is proposals about what's coming. It's a shame that this wasn't at that meeting. And I think we need to look at just how we engage with parish councils on sensitive developments. I think there should have been engagement on this. And I think the statement, the building presents contemporary character as a new landmark statement. I think that's a little insulting to the local community. It doesn't seem to reflect the sort of community engagement that we talk about. Simon Clark. Sorry, Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so I'll start off with the building itself. A 5-year-old with an Etch-a-Sketch and a pack of crayons could have designed something better than that. It's absolutely hideous, in my opinion. But then moving on to the internals, 3 toilets for potentially hundreds of people on match days is nowhere near enough. You're going to have queues halfway back down the rugby pitches, so that's one thing with the externals and the internals of the building. Again, with the externals, if it's going to be used as a community hub and also as the rugby pitches, as Councillor Winklis alluded to earlier on, in November, December, January, it's getting dark at 3:30 in the afternoon. So you are going to need some sort of external lighting around the building to enable it to be safe for members of the rugby club, members of visiting rugby clubs, and also the community that actually might use the building. And I know it says at condition 5 in the report that this, no lighting can be fitted without approval under the condition, but I would like to have seen details of the lighting put in this report so that we can give it full consideration. Also, I'm very much concerned with the highways issues. 65 parking spaces, again, as other members have said, isn't going to be at all sufficient when you've got 2, possibly 3 rugby pitches in use at some point on a Saturday or Sunday or even midweek. And actually the widening, I mean, when we saw the Google Earth picture of that road, there's no way you'd get a coach down there anyway. Well, you probably could, but you'd have to call a wrecker out to get it towed out of the field after it had dropped off the edge. And the actual turning circles within the parking area shown previously, you probably end up with actually buses reversing either into the site or out of the site, which obviously is going to cause highways issues with other members of the, well, it's going to be blocked off at one end, we know, so it won't be a through road anymore. But those either ingressing or egressing the site during, beginning, during and after matches. And I also come back to my final point, Mr. Chairman, which is slightly off-piste of where we're talking about the actual lighting pitches and all that sort of thing. It's on page 32, at 7.13.3, and it was alluded to earlier on, the community user agreement requires, through the existing 106, the committee will include an SBC officer, SBC councillor and a Baldwin Parish councillor. And as you recall, Chairman, at your briefing on Monday, this was discussed at how an officer would be able to sit on this committee from a time point of view. For starters, maybe at the beginning, from a legal point of view, it might be useful to have an officer on that committee, but I don't see how that's going to work. So I'll finish there. Thank you, Chairman. But I would, I don't think I've got enough information in this report at the moment to make an informed decision. So I'm leaning towards having this item deferred for further information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. This was raised on Monday. Do we have any further details on the CUA?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I was part of those discussions on Monday. It would be the intention of officers and those members who were present that if the application is approved, we would seek a variation to the section 106 to remove the officer from that group and to add a second member. We would recommend the second ward councillor. We have spoken with different colleagues to see if that was an officer request. We don't believe it was, so we concur that it's not appropriate for an officer to be in that role. It would be better for an additional member. Thank you.
Can we get that variation before? It just seems this is an opportunity to actually pass it without that complication, because otherwise it's going to get if it should get passed at some point, then we've got the complication of who constitutes the CUA. That could take a considerable period of time. And nothing can go forward until then. So, can we, if we go for a deferral, can we look at clarifying that, and if there's a way that we can clean that up before a decision's made?
Well, we can raise it with the applicant. The Section 106 agreement is less than 5 years old, which means that there's no formal application process that you can go through to amend the agreement, but you can come to mutual agreement between all interested parties that have signed the agreement to make a change, and this appears to me to be a fairly minor change, but we would need to discuss that with the other parties involved in the Section 106 agreement and come to a consensus there. But I think the key thing to remember is that the legal agreement is what it is. It's been signed. It binds the planning permission at the moment on the terms that have been granted. And what members are looking at here is specifically the reserve matters relating to 4 very specific elements to the development of the rugby pitch, which is the appearance, layout, scale and landscaping. So we
can't keep going over things that we've already discussed. You have mentioned
exactly
that, and I've got about 4 more speakers on this.
Exactly. So members just have to bear in mind that we have the umbrella of the outline planning permission and the legal agreement, and what we're looking at here are very specific matters relating purely to the reserve matters of this application. Thank you.
Councillor Vallis.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I welcome the investment for Sittingbourne Rugby Club, the pitches. Current base is shared with the Hockey and Cricket Club at Gore Park, Heath Street, needs its own venue. And I'm one for sporting, so physical benefits and mental well-being that brings. And out 52 letters, we've had 35 for and 17 against, so 17 objections. So 35 for, 17 objections. Let the numbers do the talking. Thank you.
Councillor Winklis.
Thank you, Chair. Let me come back quickly. After seeing the photo or the picture of the access road, that road as it stands, with very little plans to modify the road, is totally inadequate, in my view, to deal with the traffic. That is my view on that, and coaches and buses. And if it goes for deferral, I will be back in a deferral.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Palmer.
Just going to say, with the extra pitch, I don't think it's been made clear if it's as its own parking, but many people have said the extra pitch will swamp the car park as it is. And also on the recommendation, I know it might go for a deferral, but it might not. But I think it would be good in a recommendation, particularly of this sort of nature, if it was in consultation, was included in that discussion or consultation, the ward councillors and the parish council. So everyone was fully informed and aware and had a full involvement of what was going on. Thank you.
Yep, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me come back. But my lack of knowledge on this, and apologies if I'm talking drivel. This CUA, why? General question: why is it needed? Why do we have to have a borough councillor, an officer, and a parish councillor on this? We don't, to my understanding, have the same First Sittingbourne Football Club. or Shepherd United or Faversham Town or cricket clubs or Robinson Squash Club. Why do we need this? We're already pressed as an organisation in terms of staff time. Let's just put some more into the mix. I struggle, and I don't see what's the purpose of that particular thing, because I can't see it. And it might be my lack of knowledge, but I just question it.
It was a consideration that was made during the original application, but we're not quite sure how the Swale Borough Council officer got involved, but it was part of the agreement, as it was a community hub, that the parish and Borough Council be represented on it. And that's what the Secretary of State imposed. Okay. Councillor Booth, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. For clarity, we have no legal representation here this evening. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. One can be a little bit more candid then with one's comments. Firstly, for the record and for the minute, please, Kelly, my initial statement with regards to deferment neither suggests I am in favour or opposed to this application. Just make that clear. I am disappointed that legal aren't here. We have no legal representation. I would suggest this is a critical item of this evening's agenda, and we would benefit from. There's been a couple of questions where we've been tampering into contracts and agreements and deals. Some things are better said by, with respectfully, a legal professional. I'm also, again, for the minute, bitterly disappointed that the continued lack of representation by Kent County Council Highways has again jeopardised forward progress on this application this evening. A number of questions that have been raised, and I thank you, Chairman, for allowing the debate to continue, because it has brought out some very sensitive issues that I would be hopeful that KCC Highways would be able to answer this evening. But yet again, they are not here. That is appalling. So, I stand by my original statement. I don't believe that there is enough information on the table to maintain consistency, and consistency in making a decisive recommendation on the application before us. There are too many unanswered questions, and I would respectfully request this item is deferred until such a point that those questions gathered from this meeting and from the statements of the speakers are readied and brought back to this committee for formal recommendation. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Secretary Councillor Palmer. Anybody wish to speak to that? In that case, if there's no one wish to speak to the deferral, I'll take a vote. Those in favour of deferral, please indicate. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Those against? 1, 2. 1 abstention. Any other abstentions? Then that will be deferred. Thank you. Andy and Mr. Byrne.
Yeah, thank you. Just so we can be very clear as to what matters the item's been deferred on. I have written down in terms of traffic, we've got number of parking spaces, ability for coaches to turn, and the access arrangements for vehicles to enter the site, and what modifications to Cryles Lane would be required to do that. I have a question mark over lighting for people using the building itself, as opposed to floodlighting. And question the toilets and the design, and the fact that there is some concern about whether or not that design should be more in keeping with the village rather than a more contemporary design as proposed.
And if, I'll put my glass on in a minute. If we could include the contamination condition, that may already be within the main body, but just to check on that one. And the uncertainty over ecology that was raised. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the facility to come back. Added to the list then, I think it is reasonable that we consider at this committee the potential for floodlighting of the pitches. I think it's unreasonable to suggest that we're going to potentially approve such a high quality asset to Swale without the provision of that in there. So I think that needs to be covered. Also, I'm intrigued about the green credentials of the clubhouse stroke public facility, not the toilets, and actually what is going on there. There is a flat roof. A point was made about the incline of the roof. I know that can be graduated to sustain PV, and that has to be a recommendation. Also, there was a comment originally about the number of car parking spaces and those for disabled parking. We need also to understand what provision is made for electric vehicle charging. I could go on, Chairman.
Can I just clarify? The condition that prohibits floodlighting doesn't prohibit temporary floodlighting, does it? A number of pitches do use temporary floodlighting which don't need planning permission.
I think we'd have to look into that. My understanding is it prohibits any floodlighting, whether that's temporary or not. Do you mind if I just make a point about the floodlighting as well?
Yep.
Members have to be aware that the outline planning permission has this condition that specifies very clearly no floodlighting. It's not a matter that we can now debate at reserve matter stage. That's my advice to you. That restriction has been put on the outline permission. So as I said earlier, if the rugby club is contemplating floodlighting in the future, that's a matter for a separate planning application.
But you could clarify the temporary, just so that we know one way or the other.
I can, but yeah, my advice now would be it covers all forms of floodlighting. The other points that Councillor Booth raised regarding sustainability and EV charging, those matters are again subject to conditions that are part of the outline planning permission, so they don't need to be specifically considered under the reserve matters because they're already required under those conditions. So they will come forward separately as an approval of a condition. So, for example, with regards to sustainability, the requirement is that the buildings have to be constructed to what we call BREEAM, very good standards. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Could we also as we're going out for more info, clarify why the Environmental Health Officer could not comment on the impact of lighting on the Borden Nature Reserve, as that was outside his remit? If we could clarify that, because that does seem a little odd, as I would have thought it was within the remit.
Lighting in terms of its impact on nature would be a matter for ecologists, so that would be a matter that the Kent County Council ecologists would deal with if floodlighting was proposed, but clearly it's not.
I think that might be any lighting, but okay. Anybody else want anything? I thought we don't have to do this again. Okay. Well, you've got your list, Andy. Are you? Okay. Well, thank you all very much, and see you in September.
Part fives, Jim.
Part fives. Well done. Is it? Oh, that's all right then. We got time. Okay then. The part fives, a good set of results. Go on, Councillor Booth. You wanted to comment?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Chairman. I think again, this is just advice really for members. These planning appeal decisions generally bring forward some really sound reasons for us as members, should we choose to turn down applications. Doesn't give you piecemeal, but it does give you some very, very concise even wording from the planning inspectorate. Love them or hate them, but they do give some absolutely superb lines. So I would commend the decisions. I think they're superb. And it stands by a lot of the things that I've always stood for, and I'm really pleased with that. But yeah, don't throw those out. Keep them. They're good and useful knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Excellent advice. Councillor Winkles.
Yes, I'd like to also add that it's nice to see that all but one, basically, the decisions that were made by the officers or the committee at the time, the inspector upheld.
Does anyone else want to congratulate the officers? I think we do as a committee. Well done, officers. Thank you. Okay. Good night, all. For the second time.